The miracle at 30,000 feet. Captain Eugene Black Richardson's impossible stand, against orders. The August sun beat down on the tarmac of RAF Foulmere, baking the concrete and shimmering off the polished aluminum of the P-51 Mustangs. Captain Eugene Black Richardson, a man whose 32 years carried the weight of 1,000 battles, ran a gloved hand over the fuselage of his beloved Spirit of Tuskegee. The P-51, sleek and deadly, was more than just a machine. It was an extension of his will, a canvas for the hopes and fears of a nation at war. Richardson, an African-American pilot whose skill was legendary but whose presence in the segregated ranks was a constant, quiet defiance, had seen the brutal face of combat in North Africa. He knew the smell of burning oil, the taste of fear, and the cold logic of survival. Today's mission was a deep penetration escort, guiding a formation of B-17 flying fortresses to a ball-bearing factory deep within Germany. Intelligence reports indicated light to moderate enemy fighter resistance, primarily Focke-Wulf 1, but Richardson had a gnawing feeling, a prickle of unease that had saved his life more times than he could count. His gut told him the intelligence was wrong. "Morning, Captain," Lieutenant James Hammer Walsh, Richardson's wingman, chirped, his Brooklyn accent cutting through the drone of pre-flight checks. Hammer, barely out of flight school, was a bundle of nervous energy and raw talent, his eagerness tempered by a healthy respect for Richardson's experience. "Looks like a milk run, huh? Just gotta keep those krauts off our big friends." Richardson offered a tight smile. "No such thing as a milk run over Germany, Hammer. Keep your eyes peeled, and trust your instincts, not just the brief." Their squadron commander, Major Douglas Coleman, a man whose career seemed more focused on political maneuvering than aerial combat, strode past, his face a mask of rigid authority. "Richardson, stick to the flight plan. No heroics. We're here to escort, not to engage in unnecessary dogfights. Maintain formation, understand?" "Understood, Major," Richardson replied, his voice even though a flicker of annoyance crossed his eyes. Coleman had always been wary of Richardson, perhaps intimidated by his natural leadership and unparalleled skill, or perhaps simply uncomfortable with a black officer outshining his white counterparts. He saw Richardson's unorthodox tactics as a liability, not an asset. As the Mustangs roared to life, their Merlin engines coughing then settling into a powerful thrum, Richardson felt the familiar surge of adrenaline. They climbed through the morning mist, joining the lumbering giants of the bomber stream. The B-17s, silver behemoths bristling with guns, formed a tight box formation, their engines a symphony of power and vulnerability. Hours into the flight, deep over enemy territory, the air was eerily quiet, too quiet. The target was still an hour away, but Richardson's unease intensified. He scanned the vast expanse of sky, his eyes, honed by countless hours of combat, searching for any anomaly. The intelligence brief had placed the main enemy fighter strength closer to the target, but Richardson felt it in his bones. They were being led into a trap. "Hammer, keep a sharp lookout at 11 o'clock high," Richardson radioed, his voice calm but firm. "I don't like this silence." "Roger that, Black," Hammer responded, his voice a little more strained now. Even he was beginning to feel the tension. Suddenly a faint glint, then another, caught Richardson's eye, far off to the north, well outside their designated patrol sector. It was a flicker of sunlight off metal too distant to identify, but its direction and speed were all wrong for a friendly patrol. It was a large formation, moving fast, and it wasn't heading for the target, it was heading for the bombers, from an unexpected vector. "Control, this is Black Leader," Richardson radioed, his voice urgent. "I'm seeing unidentified bogies, north-northwest, high altitude, significant numbers. Looks like a flanking maneuver, not a frontal assault." A crackle of static, then Coleman's voice laced with irritation. "Black Leader, maintain your assigned sector. Our intelligence indicates no significant threats from that direction. Do not break formation." Richardson's jaw tightened. He knew what he was seeing. This wasn't a few opportunistic fighters. This was a coordinated attack, designed to bypass their escort. The bombers, flying in their rigid formation, were blind to the approaching danger from this angle. If he followed orders, hundreds of men would die. If he disobeyed, he risked court-martial, his career, everything he had fought for. He looked at the B-17s, their crews oblivious, trusting their fighter escort. He thought of the young men inside, the letters they carried, the families waiting. His moral compass spun, then settled on one undeniable truth: his duty was to protect those men, not to follow a flawed order. "Hammer, break formation," Richardson commanded, his voice cutting through the radio chatter, leaving no room for debate. "We're going north. We've got to intercept." Hammer hesitated for a split second, the weight of insubordination hanging heavy in the air, then loyalty and instinct took over. "Roger that, Black Leader, on your way." With a powerful surge of the Merlin engine, Richardson banked hard, pulling the spirit of Tuskegee away from the bomber stream. Hammer's P-51 a loyal shadow, they were flying against orders, against protocol, into the but for Captain Eugene Black Richardson, there was no other choice. Subscribe to our channel for more untold stories of courage and defiance. The P-51s screamed through the thin air at 30,000 feet, their engines straining as Richardson pushed them to their limits. The glints he had seen earlier were now resolving into distinct shapes, growing larger with terrifying speed. What he had suspected was now a horrifying reality. It wasn't a few bogies, it was a swarm. "Sweet Mother of God," Hammer breathed over the radio, his voice a raw whisper of disbelief and fear. "Black, there must be dozens of them." Richardson's eyes, narrowed against the glare, confirmed Hammer's assessment. Messerschmitt DF-109s, their distinctive angular profiles unmistakable, filled the sky. They were a dark, predatory cloud, a wolf pack descending on unsuspecting prey. He counted quickly, his mind a cold calculating machine even as his stomach churned. 37, at least 37 enemy fighters, perfectly positioned for a devastating attack run on the B-17. And we're the uninvited guests. Colonel Hermann Kruger. The name sent a chill down Richardson's spine. Kruger was a legend in the Luftwaffe, a ruthless ace with over 80 confirmed kills, known for his cunning tactics and his almost supernatural ability to anticipate his opponent. If Kruger was leading this formation, it meant this was no random encounter, it was a meticulously planned ambush. Hammer's P-51 shuddered slightly as he struggled to keep pace, his young face pale beneath his oxygen mask. 37 Black, against two of us. They'll chew us up and spit us out before we even get close. The fear in Hammer's voice was palpable, and Richardson understood it. The odds were beyond astronomical. 2 P-51s, against 37 Bf-109s, with a bomber formation full of vulnerable men as the prize. It was suicide. Every fiber of his being screamed at him to turn back, to save himself and his wingman. But then he pictured the B-17s, the hundreds of men inside, their lives hanging by a thread. He took a deep breath, the cold oxygen filling his lungs, steadying his racing heart. He thought of his grandmother, her hands gnarled from years of toil, her voice soft but firm as she read from the old worn Bible. He remembered a verse she often quoted, a beacon of strength in times of despair. "The Lord is my light and my salvation, whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life, of whom shall I be afraid?" Psalm 27:1. The words resonated deep within him, a quiet affirmation of his purpose. Fear was a natural human emotion, but it would not dictate his action. His salvation wasn't just his own, it was tied to the men he was sworn to protect. He was their light, their last hope. "Hammer," Richardson's voice was a low growl now, infused with a steel resolve that cut through the static. "Listen to me, we're not going to fight all 36. We're going to break their formation, disrupt their attack, and buy those bombers enough time to get clear. You stick to my wing, no matter what. Do you understand?" But Black, it's impossible." Hammer stammered, his eyes wide as the enemy fighters began their dive, their engines howling like banshees. "Nothing's impossible when lives are on the line, Hammer." Richardson snapped, his voice sharp with command. "Now let's go to work." He pushed the throttle forward, the Merlin engine roaring in protest as the spirit of Tuskegee surged ahead. A lone, defiant arrow aimed directly at the heart of the enemy swarm. Hammer, despite his terror, instinctively followed, his P-51 a loyal shot. They were 2 against 37, a speck of courage against an ocean of steel. The trap was sprung, but Captain Eugene Black Richardson was about to turn it into a crucible. Hit the like button if you believe in courage, even in the face of impossible odds. The air erupted into a maelstrom of noise and fury. Tracers stitched fiery lines across the sky, and the guttural roar of Bf-109 engines mingled with the high-pitched whine of the P-51s. Richardson, a blur of motion and instinct, plunged headlong into the enemy formation. He didn't hesitate, didn't flinch. His P-51 became a dancer of death, weaving through the chaos with impossible grace. His first target was a Bf-109, leading a flight of 4, already lining up on a. Richardson pulled a hard G-turn, the forces pressing him deep into his seat, his vision momentarily graying. He came up underneath the Messerschmitt, his 650 caliber machine guns spitting fire. The enemy fighter exploded in a shower of metal and flame, tumbling end over end. Splash 1, he barked, his voice tight with adrenaline. Hammer, still reeling from the sheer number of enemy aircraft, found himself in a desperate dogfight with 2 Bf-109s. He managed to get a burst into one, sending it smoking, but the other was on his tail, its guns chattering. Black, I've got a bandit on my 6, break left, Hammer. Now, Richardson commanded, already on his way. He executed a breathtaking Immelmann, climbing vertically, then rolling over and diving, his P-51 a plummeting hawk. He caught the Bf-109 pursuing Hammer in his sights, a quick burst, and the German pilot pulled up sharply, losing control, spiraling away. Clear, Hammer, stay sharp. The next 8 minutes were a blur of impossible maneuvers, split-second decisions, and raw, unadulterated skill. Richardson was everywhere at once. He used the P-51's superior speed and climb rate to his advantage, making slashing passes, never staying in one place long enough to become a target. He flew with a controlled fury, his mind calculating vectors, lid and deflection angles with chilling precision. Colonel Kruger, observing the chaos from a distance, narrowed his eyes. He had expected a quick, decisive victory. Instead, 2 American fighters, one of them clearly a master, were tearing through his formation, sowing confusion, and disrupting his carefully planned attack. He recognized the P-51's markings, the red tail of the Tuskegee Airmen. He had heard whispers of Black Richardson, the ghost of North Africa. Richardson executed a high-speed yo-yo, gaining altitude, then diving onto a group of 3 Bf-109s that were closing in on a. His guns roared, tearing into the Lyd Messerschmitt, which disintegrated mid-air. The other 2 broke formation, startled by the sudden brutal attack. He then pulled up sharply, avoiding a head-on collision with another Bf-109, its pilot momentarily stunned by Richardson's audacity. He saw Kruger's distinctive Bf-109, painted with a black raven insignia, peel off from the main formation, heading directly for him. Kruger was a hunter, and he had found his prey. Black, Kruger's on your tail, Hammer yelled, his voice hoarse, having just dispatched another Bf-109 that had strayed too close. Richardson didn't need to be told. He felt Kruger's presence, a cold, calculating intelligence, matching his own. This was the duel he had anticipated, the ultimate test. Kruger opened fire, tracers streaking past Richardson's canopy. Richardson pulled a desperate, violent corkscrew, the P-51 groaning under the strain, narrowly evading the burst. He knew he couldn't outrun Kruger in a straight fight, not with the German ace's experience. He had to outthink him. He feigned a dive, then pulled up into a steep climb, forcing Kruger to follow. At the apex, he chopped the throttle, deployed his flaps, and executed a snap roll, stalling his aircraft for a split second. Kruger, expecting a conventional turn, overshot. It was the impossible shot. For a fleeting moment, Kruger's Bf-109 was perfectly framed in Richardson's gun sight. He squeezed the trigger, a short, controlled burst. The P-50 caliber rounds ripped into Kruger's engine, cowling, a puff of black smoke, then a trail of fire. Kruger's aircraft shuddered, then began to lose altitude, spiraling slowly away, out of the fight. The sight of their ace going down broke the German formation's morale. The remaining Bf-109s, their attack disrupted, their leader crippled, began to scatter, some breaking off their attack on the bombers, others heading for home. Richardson, his P-51 riddled with bullet holes, but still flying, had destroyed 7 enemy aircraft himself, and his sheer audacity had scattered the rest. The B-17s, though battered, were still flying, their crews alive. The impossible had been achieved. Comment below, what would you have done in Captain Richardson's shoes? The journey back to Falmere was a silent, tense affair. Richardson's P-51, Spirit of Tuskegee, looked like a sieve, its fuselage peppered with bullet holes, one wingtip shredded. Hammer's aircraft was in similar condition, a testament to the ferocity of the engagement. As they touched down, the ground crew, led by the grizzled First Sergeant Robert Hayes, rushed out, their faces a mixture of awe and concern. Hayes, a man who had seen countless planes return from combat, ran his hand over the damaged fuselage, his eyes wide. "Captain Lieutenant, what in God's name happened out there? We heard the chatter, but this is incredible." Hayes, a staunch supporter of Richardson, knew the pilot's integrity better than anyone. "We ran into a bit of a hornet's nest, Sergeant," Richardson said, his voice hoarse, the adrenaline finally receding, leaving him bone-weary. "But the bombers are safe." The debriefing was anything but celebratory. Major Coleman, his face a thundercloud, paced the operations room. "Captain Richardson, you deliberately disobeyed a direct order. You broke formation, abandoned your assigned sector, and engaged the enemy against explicit instruction. Do you deny this?" Richardson stood at attention, his uniform still smelling of cordite and sweat. "No, sir, I do not deny it. I observed a significant enemy formation attempting a flanking maneuver on the bomber stream, a threat that was not accounted for in our intelligence. Had I followed orders, sir, those bombers would have been annihilated. That is not for you to decide, Captain," Coleman thundered, slamming his fist on the table. "You jeopardized your own aircraft, your wingman, and potentially the entire mission by acting unilaterally. This is insubordination of the highest order. I'm recommending a court-martial." Hammer, standing beside Richardson, spoke up, his voice firm despite his earlier fear. "Sir, with all due respect, Captain Richardson saved those bombers. He saw what no one else did. He took on 37 enemy fighters, sir, and broke their attack. He shot down 7 of them himself." Coleman scoffed. 37? Don't be ridiculous, Lieutenant. Our reports indicate a maximum of 10 enemy aircraft in the sector." But then the teletype machine in the corner began to clatter. A junior officer rushed over, tore off the message, and handed it to Coleman. The major's eyes scanned the page, his face slowly draining of color. The message was from Bomber Command. It detailed the return of the B-17 formation, heavily damaged but intact, with minimal loss. It also included reports from the bomber crews, describing a single P-51, a Black Angel, that had appeared out of nowhere, tearing through a massive formation of Bf-109s, scattering them and saving their lives. The estimated number of enemy fighters encountered by the bombers was indeed in the high 30s. The final line of the report hit Coleman like a physical blow. Approximately 300 bomber crewmen owe their lives to the extraordinary courage and skill of this unidentified fighter pilot. Coleman looked up, his gaze meeting Richardson's. The anger was still there, but now it was mixed with a grudging respect, and perhaps a flicker of shame. He couldn't deny the evidence. 300 lives saved. The threat of a court-martial hung in the air for weeks. Richardson was officially reprimanded for insubordination, his record marred by the incident. He was grounded for a short period, a symbolic gesture, but unofficially the story spread like wildfire through the Allied airfield. The Black Angel who had taken on a squadron of Messerschmitts and won, the pilot who had defied orders to save 300 men, Major Coleman, though he never publicly admitted it, quietly dropped the court-martial proceeding. He couldn't punish a man for saving lives, no matter how much he disliked the method. Richardson continued to fly, his reputation solidified not just by his skill, but by his unwavering moral compass. He never regretted his decision. The official reprimand was a small price to pay for the knowledge that 300 men had gone home to their families, alive because he chose to do what was right, not what was ordered. The miracle at 30,000 feet became a legend, whispered among the bomber crews, a testament to the extraordinary courage of Captain Eugene Black Richardson, a man who proved that true leadership sometimes meant breaking the rules to uphold a higher purpose. His legacy wasn't just in the planes he shot down, but in the lives he saved, a beacon of hope in the darkest hours of war.